Hey, welcome to Sharing Hope, everybody. On behalf of Medi-Share, I'm your host, Michael DiMuccio. Joining us today is Brennan Dean, co-founder of Great Homeschool Conventions. In a typical year, Great Homeschool Conventions has 7 venues that they do across the country, from Texas to Missouri, to South Carolina, Ohio, California, New York, Florida. In this year, obviously, things have changed, but I'll tell you what, they are still reaching a lot of people. In any given year at the venues, you're looking at 14,000 families plus that they reach, not to mention who they reach with their podcasts and their online ventures. And so today, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Brennan Dean. Welcome to Sharing Hope.
Sure appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate the ministry of Medi-Share and the ministry of Sharing Hope. And it's an honor to be here.
It's come through a lot of different backgrounds, so resourceful, from you were raised by a minister, you yourself had extensive Bible training, and then you've been in the marketplace doing national sales training. You've been in the music industry and the producing side. So I know our viewers are going to get a lot out of this interview today. So why don't we start by going back a few months ago to Fort Worth, Texas, where the GHC was told by the city that the venue had to close down, and thus the conference midstream had to start breaking down. Take us through that night and all the decisions you had to make.
Well, we've been honored to serve homeschoolers for, goodness gracious, about 12 years now. And the conventions have grown from year to year to the point that now there are 7 regional homeschool conventions, and Fort Worth was the kickoff. So Fort Worth, Texas, they're at the Fort Worth Convention Center. That was the kickoff of this year's 7 convention season. And of course, those preparations start a year prior to that. So it's the culmination of a year's worth of work that comes together in a 3-day window or a 4-day window if you include a setup day. And so it was an amazing time. We had just had 2 wonderful days on Thursday and then on Friday, chock full of workshops and time in the exhibit hall and special events. And then I believe it was right around 5 o'clock on Friday, the officials from the convention center came to us and said, hey, we really regret this, but the city of Fort Worth is sort of not flexing their muscle, but for the protection of the city, we're going to have to ask you to close this evening and vacate the building by midnight, and you won't be able to return tomorrow. And that was pretty gut wrenching. You don't know what to do except just do what they ask you to do. And so we closed and packed up. And that was a wrap.
Wow. Yeah, that was pretty incredible. But I thought you guys handled it. I was there, and I thought it was handled very graciously, very professionally. So, you've had a lot of influence, I'll say that, with a lot of homeschooling families and exhibitors as well. So let's back up a little bit. Like I had already alluded to, you were raised in was a non-Pentecostal holiness family?
Yeah, I grew up in a preacher's home. Dad was so I grew up in a denomination called the Church of the Bible Covenant. Wow. So there's a group of Church of Bible Covenant or Pilgrim Holiness or Bible Methodist or Wesleyan Methodist, and grew up in the great state of Michigan, just outside Lansing, where my dad pastored. And then when I was in high school, we moved to Ohio when my dad took another church. But yes, I spent a bunch of years growing up as a preacher's kid. The dreaded PK, us PKs and MKs, preachers' kids and missionaries' kids. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Grew up very conservative, but you know what? I cherish those days. Wonderful godly heritage, wonderful Christian foundation. Went to a school called God's Bible School here in Cincinnati, Ohio, for a couple of years of high school. And interestingly enough, God's Bible School is where Oswald Chambers taught for at least a year or two back in the day. Not when I was there, obviously. I was a long time before my time. And then after high school, I graduated from Cincinnati Christian High School. After high school, actually went to Hobe Sound Bible College in Hobe Sound, Florida, a school that is also there to this day. A lot of wonderful people there. And but yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. The preacher's kid background, and wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's right. No, that's good. That's good. Now, you are the co-founder, obviously, of GHC, and the other co-founder is your wife, Mary Jo, who I've
Absolutely.
had to meet. And tell us, how did you guys actually meet?
Well, I had just gotten out of jail. And no, I'm kidding. So Mary Jo and I met at a concert that I was promoting with Larnell Harris. So it was in Cincinnati. I used to promote concerts all over the country. This was a concert with Larnell Harris in Cincinnati, Ohio. And at my home church, Springdale Church of the Nazarene, was where I was attending. At that time, the pastor was a phenomenal guy by the name of Steve Green. Not the singer, but a pastor by the name of Steve Green. Wonderful man, very influential in my life at a time where I really, really needed it. And but yeah, Larnell Harris was the concert, and I saw this amazingly gorgeous gal in the lobby of the church, and spoke to her a couple of times. And then I knew that a friend of hers was there, and I got her phone number from that friend after she had left. And
Nice.
And the rest is history. That was that was the meeting. 3 months later, I proposed, and 6 months later, we got married.
Wow.
And then that was 30 years ago. Next month, June 30th, will mark 30 years of wedded bliss for me. I don't know about the wedded bliss for her, but wedded bliss for me anyway, right? So it's been great. And we've got 3 kids, Spencer, Sawyer, and Annie. Spencer graduated from the University of Cincinnati. Sawyer graduated from Miami of Ohio and played football there as well. And Sawyer is now in his final year of law school at Penn in Philadelphia.
Fantastic.
And Annie just graduated from the College of Mount St. Joe. And she is going back in the fall to do some graduate school there as well. So, but they say homeschooling is where mom does all the work and dad takes all the credit. I just can't say enough about the phenomenal experience we had homeschooling, and the phenomenal job that my incredible wife did homeschooling our 3 kids. Homeschooling just really gives you some outstanding ways that you can tailor your kids' education to their unique learning style and their unique interests. And it gives you a lot of flexibility with schedule and otherwise. And we found it to be an absolutely outstanding route for us to go.
Sure.
And as you know, it's growing throughout the country. We're not seeing those numbers go down. We're
right.
seeing those numbers increase to the degree the 7 regional homeschool conventions that we do very directly impact about 15,000 families a year that attend, and then countless numbers that may not specifically attend but find help from some resource that we're able to provide or introduce them to. And then this year, as we have had to sort of pivot, you mentioned the Fort Worth convention that closed a day early. We had to reschedule our remaining convention season. Regretfully, we didn't reschedule it all at once. We were hoping that we would be able to squeeze at least a couple of conventions in, but we've had to reschedule those to 2021. And they will take place in California, Texas, Florida, Missouri, Ohio, South Carolina, and New York. And if anybody wants to check them out, it's at greathomeschoolconventions.com. No secret of the website there. but we sort of pivoted online. So we really hunkered down and recorded almost 170 workshop sessions. Now, that's one of the hallmarks of a great homeschool convention. And we kiddingly say, you've never been to a great homeschool convention until you've been to a great homeschool convention, since obviously that's the name of the company, we tongue in cheek. But one of the hallmarks of a great homeschool convention, we believe, is that it is a very, it's an atmosphere that is very specifically designed to equip and encourage homeschool moms and dads and homeschool families. And as a part of that, it's a very information-rich environment where we offer quite literally hundreds of workshops. At any given time, you may find 10 or 12 or 15 workshops going on, from which an attendee can choose what is most applicable to their family for that given season of life and season of homeschooling. There may be a mom that feels like she needs some help in an area of, particular parenting or parenting with special needs or special giftedness. Whereas another mom or dad may have middle schoolers or high schoolers or preschool or elementary, and some have very unique learning challenges or unique giftedness that they need some assistance with. And then we have people that really focus in on very specific areas of higher level math and science, et cetera, for people that homeschool all the way through high school. Which many more are doing these days. In addition to that, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that a part of a great homeschool convention is that we have a Real Faith for the Real World team track that is usually headed by a great guy by the name of John Stonestreet from the Chuck Colson Center for Christian Worldview. Now, John's not there every year, but schedule permitting, John is always one of the key speakers for both parents and teens. But we try to provide a great environment for mom and dad. But in addition, we have that worldview team track that runs throughout the convention as well, to also be equipping and encouraging those teenagers that are being homeschooled and are either preparing for the workforce, or to go on into college or university settings, or perhaps go into the military or whatever. So
now, something else that you guys incorporate, and I'm not so familiar with other homeschool gatherings, but you guys have like special events throughout the day. Like midday, you have a children's Bible instructor of some kind that has character to it, puppets, or just live presentations at night. You guys will have comedians, musicians, different things of that. Talk to that aspect about the great homeschool culture.
So the convention runs over a 3-day period. And since it's an information-rich environment where there are just hundreds of workshops going on and a huge curriculum and resource exhibit hall to browse and shop and get ideas for what will work best, for each family and for each child, we try to lighten the mood usually a little bit in the evenings and have a special event of some sort. So on Thursday evening this year, we had the Real Mom track, which we have a few real popular mom bloggers, Sarah McKenzie and Pam Barnhill and Colleen Kessler, that come together and just have a real fun and encouraging time, but keeping it real with moms, talking about real life and real challenges and real struggles, and quite frankly, real victory through a relationship with Jesus Christ, and also putting your nose to the grindstone and working hard sometimes, right? But so we always have something special to sort of kick off the conventions on Thursday evening. And then on Friday evening, we ordinarily involve a comedian. And that this year was Andrew Stanley. In years past, that's been Johnny W. or Mark Lowry or Tim Hawkins. And then also on Friday, one of the real popular aspects, and I love these guys, or this guy, and that's Slugs and Bugs. We have a phenomenal children's concert with Slugs and Bugs and Randall Goodgame. Slugs and Bugs. Look, if you're looking for good wholesome music and music that will also help teach the Bible to your kids. Slugs and Bugs is just absolutely outstanding. And Slugs and Bugs is always there, not late in the evening on Friday, because a lot of kids like to actually be at that concert and then they can't stay up super late. So we usually have Slugs and Bugs concert a little earlier in the day, and then the comedian that evening. And then on Saturday, there's usually some grand finale of some sort. This year, that was Gracia Burnham. Gracia was actually kidnapped in the Philippines. She and her husband were missionaries, and they were actually at a resort celebrating their wedding anniversary when they were kidnapped by radical Islamic terrorists and held for a period of time. This is years ago now. And tragically, as there was an attempted rescue, she was rescued, but her husband was shot and killed during the rescue. And Gracia has an amazing testimony, wrote a phenomenal book called In the Presence of My Enemies that sort of details that whole experience. So Gracia was one of our special speakers this year. Another special speaker this year was, oh goodness gracious, I'm getting old. Her name is slipping my mind, and she's absolutely phenomenal.
From the Holocaust?
Yeah, our Holocaust survivor. Inga.
Inga, that's right.
Boy, that's horrible. Inga's got a much better memory than I, and she's a lot older than I too. But Inga Auerbacher, Inga was a child during those days and was in a concentration camp with her parents. And it's very powerful. You know, it's an example of living history that we're able to bring to the conventions. And I think Inga will be back with us again next year. She wants to come back, and we want to have her back. But she tells her story, and it's amazing, Mike. One of the things that she has related that I thought was so powerful was that when she was in that concentration camp, she had a little friend about her age who got to take a ride on a train with her family. And she was very jealous that she didn't get to go on the train and her friend did. And it was only years later that she realized that when her friend and her family got on the train, they were being moved from that camp to Auschwitz, where they were ultimately murdered. Wow. So isn't that amazing? Sometimes there are things that we think we're missing out on something, and we might not be missing anything, right? Right. So sometimes it's good to just trust the Lord, and that's hard to do sometimes, but ultimately He's got a greater plan in place. So, but Inga has been a speaker in years past. Just for what I mean, we always try to do something that's interesting and fun. Governor Mike Huckabee has spoken. Yeah. Dr. Ben Carson has been a speaker in years past. Would love to have either one of those guys back in the future, and I hope to. Trying to think. We were honored to have the late Chuck Colson as a speaker many years ago in those early years. So there are an awful lot of speakers that have come in and really helped us equip and encourage homeschoolers, and they've been a real blessing to homeschoolers, and I think those homeschoolers have been a real blessing to them over the years as well. So if you come to a Great Homeschool Convention, you'll find hundreds of workshops from which you can choose what's most, appropriate for your family. You'll find a huge resource and exhibit hall to browse and shop, and there'll be some special events going on that are good for moms, good for dads, good for teens. We had Michael Franzese. I don't know if you know who Mike Franzese is. Michael Franzese spoke for us a couple of years ago, and I reached out to Michael. We'll probably have him back at some point over the next year or two. Mike was a made man in the Colombo crime family, and actually ended up going to prison, and just a really victorious testimony, came to faith in Jesus Christ, actually ended up out of prison, obviously now, and shares his testimony quite frequently around the country. And he and his wife actually homeschooled after he was out of prison, and they had a daughter that was of school age, and so he went from being a made man, being a capo in the Colombo crime family, to being a homeschool dad. So,
Wow.
and by the way, he told me that homeschooling was harder than anything else he'd ever done, by the way. So,
Perspective.
That's not necessarily always the case. I think he was certainly kidding as well. But when you think about homeschooling, so again, if I can brag on my wife, and I don't think she'll mind me sharing this, but she and I, neither of us have like an education degree or anything like that. But Mike, nobody loves your kids like you love your kids. Nobody is invested in your children like you are invested in your children. Nobody is as committed to making sure that your kids have the education they need and deserve. Nobody is committed like a mama bear or a papa bear is committed, right? And
That's right.
and the proof is in the pudding. Now, let's carefully observe here. That's not to say that you might not find a homeschool parent somewhere that may be a knucklehead. There are public school parents that are knuckleheads as well, right? But on par, those homeschool parents are the salt of the earth. We are honored to serve them and work with them and work for them. You got to understand, these are families that the vast majority of the time are foregoing a second income because they feel so passionately about home educating their children and raising them in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And the impact of that is not just generational, but it's eternal. And so if that means that we forego a second income or part of a second income, now there are homeschool families that are immensely successful and they may live on one income, but it's an income quite a bit more than I'm accustomed to making. But there are so many families that really, really sacrifice, and we love those families, and it's an honor to serve them, and quite frankly, it's an honor to work with those companies and ministries that come alongside us and help us serve them, such as Medi-Share. If I may be so just transparent, there's no way that we could do what we do. We could not serve these homeschool families if it weren't for the amazing support and vision of people like Medi-Share to sort of be co-laborers in ministry with us. And we're very grateful for that. And I can tell you on an annual basis, there's at least 15,000 homeschool families that are very grateful as well. So anyway.
Oh, that's a good word. Thank you for that. And we see within our own membership base, there's many homeschoolers, and things like a GHC is a great way for people to be resourced. I mean, you take just one of your venues is the Duke Energy Center now in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati.
I mean, you guys, there's tons and tons of exhibitors, places that people can get resources. How many do you get in that exhibit hall for the Great Homeschool in Cincinnati there?
So we sort of account for that as households. So and for us, a household may be a mom or dad that showed up by themselves, or it may be a family of 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever.
Or 12.
Or 12, absolutely.
Yeah.
When somebody registers as a family, so we have an individual registration and a family registration. And if you get a family registration, our family registration includes mom, dad, and children and grandparents, because we want to encourage grandparents to come along as much as possible and sort of join their children and grandchildren on this adventure that is homeschooling. So in Cincinnati, we would typically see around 4,300. That's sort of the mothership. The Cincinnati convention is the oldest running one. That's the one we started 12 years ago. So there'll be about 4,300 families that come to the Cincinnati convention. We keep registration ridiculously affordable. We've actually had people tell us, we don't know how you keep it so affordable. And we are quick to remind them that we keep it affordable because we have great ministry partners that join with us and help us do that. But yeah, about 4,300 families. We keep it very affordable. And then on top of that, if you are a military family, thanks to our ministry partners and sponsors, military families, just as a small token of our appreciation, always come half price. There's just a 50% military discount. If you're military, active, retired, whatever, we owe such an incredible debt of gratitude to those that wear the uniform or have worn the uniform. And then we also have a full scholarship for any minister families, any pastors' families that attend. And then last but not least, even though the registration is truly very, very affordable. I mean, an individual can attend the entire convention for a $30 or $40 or $50 registration. A family can attend 3 days of convention with hundreds of workshops for a $50 or $60 or $70 registration, depending on when they register. The earlier you register, the more affordable it is. But on top of all that, we understand, because we were a single income homeschooling families. The kids have all graduated now. But if you would like to volunteer and work a volunteer shift for us, then you get an admission to the entire convention for your family. So if mom or dad works a volunteer shift that's either 4 hours or 6 hours, then the entire family can come to all 3 days. So it's truly about trying to serve homeschool families, trying to equip and encourage homeschool families. And again, I just have to go back to the fact that impact is generational, and that impact is eternal. And we believe on a family level, it is family to family. That's a generational and an eternal impact. And as we co-labor with our ministry partners and do everything that we do, again, we're asking the Lord to bless it. And we believe that that impact is going to be generational, and it will be eternal as well.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned earlier in the interview, you went to the virtual platform to do fulfill the conferences this year with the current context. And then you said in 2021, you're going to be back on the road doing it the way you guys have been. So I'm assuming, or maybe you can speak into this a little bit, have the different communities, states, cities, counties been pretty much in a place where they're saying, yeah, you know what, we anticipate everything being back to normal by then? Are these, have you been able to nail all of them down, or is it just kind of a work in progress at this point?
It's absolutely a work in progress. So
Gotcha.
we are optimistic, cautiously optimistic that by the time we get to next season, which for us will begin in March, that we'll have herd immunity, if nothing else. It certainly appears that some things are moving in that direction, but we'll, hold our breath and hope for the best there. But we are certainly planning from our speakers and our exhibitors and our venues, and we will be back next year. Now, we will probably still do a virtual event at the end of the summer that will be scaled back. It won't be quite as big as this year's virtual event. I mean, we may have 20 or 30 extra workshop sessions online. But one of the things that I really liked about this year, we had great response to the online homeschool convention with those workshop sessions, because people were stuck at home, right? Because there's nothing quite like the energy of being there in person, being able to pick up curriculum and resources and look at it and examine it and talk to the very person that designed it or wrote it or perhaps used it for a number of years. And then from a speaker perspective, to be able to hear some of these phenomenal experts that have a heart for the Lord and a heart for homeschoolers, like Dr. Kathy Cook and Dr. Jay Weil and Andrew Peterson and Andrew Pudawa and John Stonestreet, and on we could go. but you not only get to hear them, but then after the talk, you have time that you can go up and speak with them and ask them, follow-up questions, or you catch them in the exhibit hall and you can ask them some follow-up questions. So there's nothing that ever quite replaces that. You might enjoy watching a good concert on TV, but that's not quite like being at the concert live, or a good ball game on TV. But there's nothing quite like, going to the Super Bowl in person, right? Or at least that's what they tell me. So, but I'm waiting for those tickets you were going to send me. But anyway, beyond that, when we did the virtual event, we were knocked out by the response that we saw from outside of the United States.
Wow.
So it was very, very humbling and encouraging to see people from literally around the world, some of which are no doubt missionary families serving in foreign countries, right? But not all of those were missionary families, and they came to the homeschool convention, to that online platform, and we were able to help equip and encourage people that live halfway around the world that we would not have reached otherwise. And so I think that's a real important aspect of what we're doing. We'll have those live regional conventions. And when I say regional convention, understand at any given Great Homeschool Convention, we have attendees from 6 or 7 or 8 states. And the Cincinnati, Ohio Convention typically has attendees from about 15 states, plus a couple of foreign countries. We've had people, and we have even missionaries that sort of plan their trip home every now and then around catching one of the homeschool conventions, which that's awfully awesome when we see that. And again, it's not us per se. It's not Brennan and Mary Jo Dean. We're the facilitators.
Right.
I don't speak. Mary Jo doesn't speak. She could, I'm sure, and be phenomenal. We try to promote and produce an amazing event. And in promoting and producing an amazing event, we are honored that we have such an incredible roster of speakers that come in and sow into these homeschoolers' lives every year. This year, it was kind of a bummer we had to cancel. Phil Robertson was going to be with us. Phil Robertson from Duck Commander was going to be in Texas and Ohio this year. And we had to make other plans when the city of Fort Worth pulled the plug on that, if you will. So, but we're looking forward to next year and have a lot of great things planned. So the discussions are in place right now to have some of those special events put back together that you and I discussed a minute ago with Slugs and Bugs. Slugs and Bugs will be back at the conventions next year. The Real Mom Tour will be back at the conventions next year with Sarah McKenzie and Pam Barnhill and Colleen Kessler. Inga Auerbacher, our Holocaust survivor, that I say ours. We call her ours because we love her. Inga will be back at least one of the conventions, if not several of the conventions next year, sharing her story and giving our attendees the opportunity to meet a Holocaust survivor, that's an opportunity that, that's a living history opportunity that may not come again soon. So again, we're looking forward to a great season in 2021 and hope many can come and join us.
Well, my friend, it is always a pleasure, to even hang out with you, to chat with you, and appreciate who you are. And to those of you that are viewing, I'll tell you what, go to greathomeschoolconventions.com. I mean, there, like Brennan said, there's lots of offerings there. There's podcasts. There's so much that they. And
the online convention is still ongoing.
That's right, through the end of the year, right?
Yeah, there are hundreds of workshops from just absolutely incredible speakers that can be watched on demand at your leisure. So
fantastic. Well, Brennan, thank you for being with us. Thanks to everybody that's joined us today. And again, Brennan, thank you for sharing hope.
Thank you. Have a great evening.